CRO-AM Connections, connecting with Croatian-Americans through conversation and events to share our culture. Today on our show, we have 8-time Emmy Award winner Jerome Jurenovich, a sports broadcaster for over 4 decades, covering both East and West Coast in radio and television from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you all for joining us today, and dobro nam došli. Today we're having a conversation with an 8-time Emmy Award winner, Jerome Jurenovich. He's been in sports broadcasting for over 4 decades, covering East and West Coast in radio and television, hailing from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Jerome.
Thank you very much, Marty. Pleasure to be here with you guys. Good to see you again, my friend. Of course, we were just together recently, but it's nice to be with you as always, and our fellow Croatians. Živeli!
Živeli. Excellent, Joe. Yeah, we spent some time together. It was me, you, Scott, Filthy 46 out in Pittsburgh for the Croatian-American Sports Hall of Fame. You were the master of ceremonies. You did a phenomenal job, as you have done in your career over the years. We made a connection, though, because the show's all about connections. We actually made a lot of connections, but we made one a personal connection. We heard where you were from, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But we said, hey, do you know Father Matt? And you're like, oh, yeah, I do know Father Matt. And I was like, yeah, he married us and he's my mother-in-law's cousin and all that. So that was really, really neat to have that conversation with you about Father Matt. He passed away last year. Yeah. He's going to be a missed priest. Everybody loved him. But the other thing we were talking about in the car ride home was how much he would have loved being in that room with you and with all the Pittsburgh talent during those ceremonies. So.
Yeah, he was such a beloved figure in our church in Sharon, PA, St. Anthony's Croatian Catholic Church. He had been there a long, long time, and there isn't a parishioner there that does not miss him and did not love that man. He was just, those little ethnic churches in Western PA, they're very small and they're like giant families. And there was a time where a lot of them in that Shenango Valley, it was a valley of about 75,000 people in its heyday, had 6 steel mills running. They're all closed now. So it's probably a little bit more than half of that population. And they were shuttering a lot of the churches. But Father Matt did a fantastic job of making sure St. Anthony's is one of the ones that stayed open. It remains open. And a lot of that is due to him, and we owe him a great deal. He was just a great parish priest. He was just a great parish priest, and everybody loved him, and he will not be forgotten in that community. There's no question about that.
Yeah, you guys got lucky. We tried to steal him away in Steelton for a little bit. That didn't
work. We know. You ain't get Father Matt. Forget about it. Can't pull that. Oh, I'm related to him. Who cares, baby? He's our priest.
Good stuff. Hey, so we do 3 parts here for this podcast. The first part is we want to dive into your Croatian roots as much as you want to share, and hopefully you can take us back into Croatia with you a little bit, where your family's from. The second part is just love to hear about your storied career over the 4 decades, 8 Emmys. That's awesome. And all you regaled us with a lot of stories over the weekend, and hopefully you'll share some of those tonight with us as well. And the last part, we typically say, what's your vision for the future, or what's future events? But we know you're retired, and you're loving life. And so the question to you at the end of the show is, what's Jerome been up to in retirement? So love to hear what's happening with you there. So let's dive in. Talk to us about your Croatian roots.
Well, let's begin with my grandparents. All 4 of them came over on the boat, as they say. And my father's family is from Oakley, and I was fortunate enough. I've been over there now 4 times. The first 3, I was in that area, so I went to go visit my cousins and met them. And on the second trip over there, not only did I go visit my cousins on my father's side, and found the house that my grandfather was born in. That property has been in our family for well over 200 years, about 250 years. The second trip over, my wife is great at this stuff. She found out I knew where my grandmother was from on my mother's side, but we kind of had lost track with that side of the family. And, my father had been over 6 times, so it was easy to find his family, not so much on my mother's side. But we did find the house where my grandmother was born. And I'm the kind of person that I would rather do it without permission and get yelled at and say, don't do it again. So we're walking around this neighborhood and I'm like, this has got to be the house. So I just walk in the backyard and there's some young girl there. She's nursing a baby. She's maybe 18. And I said, do you speak English? And she goes, a little bit. I said, my grandmother was born in this house. And she freaked out and yelled for her dad. And then we had a great conversation through an interpreter and a local police officer who was wondering what I was doing walking around in people's yards. And next thing I know, almost that entire street, it wasn't a long street. There were maybe 10 or 12 houses on it. They were all my grandmother's relatives. So
Nice.
A few of them that did speak English, they brought out as you know, those Croatians, they bring out the homemade wine and the fresh bread and cheese. And we just sat on a porch and it was great connecting with them. But I got pretty close to my father's side. And the first time it was so interesting. My wife and I went over and I knew I had cousins in Split and met them when we got off the car ferry, had lunch with them and dinner with them and hung out with them for about a day and a half. And they told us, just go to Oakland. My older cousin didn't speak English very well. And in America, we're used to directions. Okay. Yeah. Take 80 west, get on 77 up to Cleveland, whatever. Over there, she's just go. I'm like, what do you mean just go? And if anyone has been over to Croatia, which most people have that are Croatian, the highways over there are just spectacular. We have nothing like them here in America. So you're driving like 90, 95 and people are passing you up. Then you get off the highway and it's curvy roads and villages of 3 or 4 houses. And because we didn't know where we were going, it took longer. It's only about an hour and a half, probably a little shorter if we knew where we were going. And the best part was we pull into this town, Oakland, and the main street's maybe 200 meters long, and we don't have a house number. We don't know what to do. And we're driving down the street, see a lady going into the market, and I asked her, do you speak English? She said, no. And I yelled out my last name and she's like, no, down the street. Next thing you know, we're at the end of the street and there's a church. And we figured, well, it's all the gravestones surrounding the church. We opened the gate and the first 3 gravestones we saw were all my relatives. They were my dad's cousin, my dad's uncle, and his great grandfather. I mean, that first stone was old, and so we knew we were in the right place. And saw a couple of old guys building a stone wall. It looked like it was something out of the 1600s. They're smoking unfiltered cigarettes. They looked like they weighed 80 pounds. They didn't have their shirts on, and they didn't speak English. But I said my name, and they said cafe. So we walk into the cafe. And like every bar in America, there's this drop-dead gorgeous 20-year-old brunette behind the bar. And the bar's like the size of maybe my living room. And I said, excuse me, do you speak English? She goes, of course I do. All the young people do. And I said, my grandfather is from this town. In America, we pronounce the hard J. Over here, it's Jurenovich. But do you know a Jurenovich or a Jurenovich? And there were 3 guys at a high top drinking wine, didn't speak English. All they heard is, I'm from America. And I look, she just points to a table of 4 guys playing cards. And I look over and a guy in an orange shirt goes, hey, you're my cousin. I recognize you from Facebook. How crazy was that? And they literally lived across the street. He goes, let me finish my card game. Typical Jurenovich, you got to finish your card game. Okay, I just flew 5,000 miles. You got to finish your card game.
You're world famous and you got to
right? So next thing I know, these 3 guys that don't speak English are buying my wife and I glasses of wine, and the 5 of us are just drinking, and the little bartender's interpreting, and we were having a grand old time. Went across the street. My cousin took me over there, showed me the house my grandfather was born in. He built a house right next door, and he's calling his father and mother at work. They came running over, and there were 4 brothers and a sister there. They were all my dad's first cousins, and they, of course, knew my father, and he had passed the year earlier. And, the women start crying because they said I looked like my dad and everything. And we just sat there drinking home. They made their own wine. Yeah. They went out and hunted their own meat, and, they had it all working. And we spent a couple of days with them, and we went and visited them every time we had been back, except for this last trip because we were up in Revenge and Pula, up in the peninsula area, which is way too far because of where they are. But the previous trip 2 years ago, we took my brother's family, him and his two boys, and my sister, her husband, and my nephew and his now wife. They were engaged at the time.
Was that their first time?
That was all of theirs.
All
first time. So it made it easier for them because we knew where we were going. We met in Dubrovnik, and we walked. I had been to Dubrovnik 2 other times, so we walked the wall, went to that bar in the wall that's overlooking the water. Went up and down the steps that were in Game of Thrones, and I was yelling at my sister, "Shame, shame!" She had no idea because she never saw Game of Thrones. She ruined it. We did everything. Then we were over in Split, and then we went up and we stayed with our buddy Marco, who has right outside of Oakland. He had built this little facility where he reconstructed these giant wooden wine vats, and he turned each one into a hotel room. He cut a hole in it, built a bathroom. It's big enough for a king bed, and he has 8 or 10 of them, and it's agro-tourism. So he has a great little area outside where he makes all your meals for you. It's under the hood, the old Croatian under the hood, delicious. My cousins know him, so they're bringing wine over. Marco's pulling out wine, his own wine, and Slivovitz, and we're eating and drinking like pigs. So we've gone to see Marco like 3 times now. He just loves us. He got me one of those traditional Croatian hats. I should have pulled it out for you guys. Sorry. Nice. There's a picture in there. If you can find it, you can put it on there, me and Marco. And, my family, my cousins over there were so happy to meet the other ones. And it was, they butchered a lamb for us, and we just there's a picture of all of us in my cousin's backyard eating this lamb, and the picture is just us shoving food in our faces because we grew up this Croatian church. One Sunday, when the weather was nice, from the spring through the fall, one of the parishioners, he basically lamb on the spit. That was his job. He went all through Western PA, Lower New York, Eastern Ohio, even down into West Virginia. And that's all he would do for these picnics all around the area. Oh, wow. And his oldest son and I went to school together for 12 years. So we ate lamb, fresh lamb, right off the spit. It was like eating as easy as McDonald's for us. It was just part of our life, and haven't had that in a long time. And so they did it, and they did it up. And
do you do the spring onions and bread and lamb, or is it just straight lamb, or how do you? I
don't do the onions. Onions bother me. Everybody else in the family does it, but I just gorge on the pogacha and the lamb, and a little bit of whatever vegetables they have. Not that much, but look. When it comes to dessert, I don't waste time on something that's not chocolate. I'm not going to lose caloric intake on something non-chocolate. When it comes to food like lamb on the spit, I'm not filling up on veggies, potatoes, and whatever greens you're giving me. Give me the meat, because I'm not going to get this again for who knows how long. So I was just like a Viking. I'm just pounding nothing but meat.
You're all in.
I'm all in on that. It was just remarkable. But
that's fine.
So the grandparents all came over. They settled. They were about maybe 18 miles east of Youngstown, right on the PA-Ohio border where 80 goes into Ohio, last stop. And it's a big Croatian community, for that area. For any of your viewers or listeners, that whole Rust Belt, Chicago, Cleveland, you get down all the way down into Pittsburgh. There's thousands of Croatians. We had a really nice sized community when I was little, and first Mass was in Croatian on Sundays, and it was, a lot of the older people barely spoke English, if they spoke it at all, and my parents spoke it. My biggest regret in life is, being a child of the 60s, we pushed back on that. We want to be American. We want to be. Now I'm kicking myself. I wish I spoke it fluently, but I do not.
You and me both.
A couple phrases here and there, and that's really about it. But it was a fantastic area to grow up. Everybody there, very proud of their ethnic heritage. We were very proud of being Croatian, wearing my Croatian shirt here.
Nice.
It was so unique, this little community of maybe 70,000 people. Maybe 8 blocks from us was the Polish Catholic Church. Then right down the street, the Italian Catholic. They were all by the ethnic denomination, because when the grandparents came over, they didn't speak English. So they had to be able to understand. And so they all huddled together. And it was funny because our grade school was right across the street from the Italian grade school. We'd go to work, get off the bus with my neighborhood buddies. See you at 3. He's going to the Italian school. I'm going to the Croatian. And it was a great area to grow up. I mean, everybody worked in the mill. We didn't know we didn't have money. It was just awesome. It was family, food, fun, So
is that your, because you belong to the Faro Lodge, is that your Faro Lodge shirt, or what shirt you got?
This is the Pittsburgh CFU. This is the Pittsburgh CFU at Peso.
CFU. The home office. You got the big shirt.
Yeah. My dad was heavily involved. He loved Ed Peso. Ed, every time he sees me, my dad would just get on the phone and call Ed in the middle of the day. And I'm like, Dad, he's working. He would talk to him for like 45 minutes. Ed couldn't get off the phone. My dad was both of my parents were, but I got the loud mouth out of, the speaking ability out of my dad. And boy, he was a proud Croatian long before, the war started, long before they broke away. And nobody said Yugoslavia where we grew up. It may have been Yugoslavia, but you were either Croatian or Slovenian or whatever you were, it didn't matter. Bosnian, Serb. Nobody said Yugoslavian because we were old school, and I didn't even know any better. I just knew it was part of Yugoslavia. And then, of course, as an adult, everything transpired from there. So I'm very proud of my roots. And I tell you right now, I wish I would have started traveling to Croatia sooner in life. Been 4 times. I would go 14 more if I could. That country is absolutely beautiful. It is so much fun.
Yeah, it draws you back. It is home when you meet family. It's coming home. It's an experience everybody has to have. So let's transition into your career. But before we do that, I was listening to a story you told on another.
Wait! I got to tell you on my travels. Travels. So the first time we go, we start in Dubrovnik, then we go to Korčula, then we're in Split, then we're in Zadar. We're hitting all this stuff. Then we go up to Zagreb. Second time we go over there, we're in Dubrovnik again, just because it's easier to get around. And then we're hitting all the. Oh my God! I fell in love with Vis. I could go to Vis. We were in Starigrad, Vartan. That's a little too busy. I like the smaller ones, but just the flowers, just the lesser crowds. You can always get a table. Those were absolutely fantastic. Plivitz Lakes and all that. I took my brother and my sister's family up to Kirka Falls as well. So we were all over, and then we were up into the peninsula up in the northwest part. On the last trip. So it's just, nice. I'm not trying to name drop or anything there. I just love everywhere that we have been. I was sending you guys some photos, and the more I'm looking at them, I'm getting the itch. We were just there this summer. I'm getting the itch, and my wife's going, we're going to South Africa to chase lions. And I'm like, okay, that's our next trip. But anyway, enough of that.
Did you get up to Pula to see the amphitheater? That's one thing I haven't been able to see yet.
Yes. And so we go to Pula. We knew we were going. We looked at the dates, and we just missed Lenny Kravitz. And not that I'm a huge Lenny Kravitz fan, but it's good music. The whole point is I wanted to see something there. We saw Andrea Bocelli. Now, I'm not a big opera and all that kind of stuff, but it was fantastic. I sent you a picture from outside. And they had, the purple and red and blue lights are coming through. So it had a really good look. We did. I tell you, I used to live in Denver, and I went to a concert out at Red Rocks out there. If you're a big fan of any type of music and you get an opportunity to go to Red Rocks Amphitheater outside of Denver, I cannot recommend it more. It's probably the best concert venue in the United States. But I never thought I'd see anything top it until I went to the Coliseum in Pula. Oh my goodness, that thing it's just amazing. Can you just imagine the history? You're sitting in there and all that. It was just.
It's the history, and they use it. That's they say it's awesome, right?
It's awesome. And it's just awesome. You're sitting there and you feel like you're puffing up on the Gladiator. Not really, but they had those things in there. It's so unique. There's nothing like it.
Were you, because you talked about Split, I have some family in Trogir. Did you get a chance to
Trogir. Yeah. I would go to Trogir in a minute. We went 3 times to Trogir. I insisted every time we go to Split that we go over to Trogir. Nice. And we went up, took my brother and sister's family. When we took to see the cousins, we had to come back to, I said, instead of coming back to Split, we're all going to Troguer. So we spent 2.5 days in Troguer, 3 days in Troguer. And
Nice.
yeah, Troguer is probably right behind Wies. Wies, Troguer, and Stary Grad were probably my favorite areas. And Revenge, boy, that was pretty cool too. That was pretty cool too.
Road trip. I'm thinking
Yeah.
road trip, Jerome.
Yeah, you should go. I just love Troguer. And I like Korčula too. And when we were in Korčula for 3 days, so we decided to take one and drive up into wine country. And it was so beautiful. And my mother's family, they're nowhere near the coast. They're about 30 minutes west of Zagreb. And once you get through the couple little towns west of Zagreb, the suburbs, you're just in those rolling hills, and they're just green, and it's just one valley. It's beautiful over there.
That town, you said Sveti Martin, right?
Sveti Martin, yeah. There's a bigger one up on the Slovenian border, but this one is much smaller, very, very small. Like I said, it's about a half an hour west of Zagreb.
Is it close? Do you know? Is it close to Ozal? It's
yes, it is. So we passed that. It's really almost right next to it. I have pictures of me, taking pictures of these little yellow signs that indicate the little village or town that you're in, and that was very close to it. Yes,
that's interesting because so Scott and Heather's family are from Ozal, and if you go in the museum, the local museum there, you see like Rankin banknotes and all the names, like like you said about going into the the cemetery.
We go to the cemeteries. When we went to the one by my mother's church, we knew we were in the right town. I saw 6 different family names from my church in Sharon, PA, that are buried in that. So I'm like, this is crazy. I knew a lot of them came over and they kind of stuck together. I didn't realize there were that many. And I found the church that my grandmother was baptized in, so we stuck around, and that Sunday morning they had mass. And I don't speak the language, but let's face it, if you're Catholic, you know the mass, right? Yeah. And I'm in there, and it's like 5 minutes before the mass, and I'm walking around. It's a tiny little church. The pews are packed. I'm taking all these pictures on my iPhone, and these people are looking at me like, who is this tall goofball who doesn't live in our village? And I'm just I didn't care, though. I'll never get back there. I just those little churches are really cool, though.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Any more travel stories? I don't want to cut you off.
I could talk travel all day, but
you're good. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do want to transition into career, but I was listening to one of your previous interviews, and you had a great story. For anybody who went to a Catholic school, nice mug. Whoever, anybody who went to a Catholic school and you had a nun as a teacher, this story that I heard from you, it just rang true and like brought memories back. So the point that I want you to share is why you started using Jerome, that story. Do you remember that story?
Sure.
That's a funny story. You got to share.
So in our grade school, it was so small because it was just part of the Catholic Church. So I think there were maybe 2 kids that went to the 8 grades that were not members of the church. Everybody else was, they were parishioners. So there were only 15 kids in my 8th grade class, 5 boys and 10 girls. So we had all nuns except 2 lay people in all our classes. And then I started at Kennedy. It's now Kennedy Catholic High School. It's Kennedy Christian back then. It's the Catholic high school in the Sharon Farrell area. And first day of class, you're seated alphabetical. And we had a nun, God bless her. She's still there. I don't think she's teaching anymore, but she's still involved with the school. Sister Margaret. And she was kind of a smart aleck, let's just say. She was a hard case at times. And she's reading off the names, and I'm like the 3rd one in. And she said, and she had my older brother and sister, so she knew my name. She goes, Jerry Jurenovich. And I raised my hand. And the kid that turned out to be my best friend through high school was sitting right behind me. I never met him. She goes, Jerry Cocaine. And he raised his hand, and she just looks with this stern look. And her lips like sticking out. And we're like, what did we do wrong? So we've been here 5 minutes. We couldn't have done anything wrong. And she goes, I'm not going to spend 4 years of saying Jerry and have 2 people go, which one? Which one? One of you have to change your name. And I raised my hand. I said, my dad's name is Jerry. Every time somebody calls, I'm answering his phone or he's handing me. I said, I want to go by Jerome. And she goes, you're Jerome. And that's where it all started. I was Jerome from there. And the kid behind me, his name was Jerome, but he went by Jerry. And his dad's name was Jerome. So we really had 4 Jeromes, but I was the only one that went by Jerome. And it stuck, and it's so unique. And look, I don't want to sound, I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but like in the 70s and 80s, even though it's a saint, it's a Catholic name, it was very popular among African Americans. So people used to laugh at me and call me Jerome, and say, hey, I know why you play basketball and all these stereotypes, And I'm sitting there going, whatever. But it's kind of worked. I worked in the NBA for 18 years, and all the brothers would make fun of me. Round me round, Jerome, you're the only white guy I know named Jerome. And they would just laugh. And I'm like, all right, yeah,
That's a great story. I love that one. So you started up in the Erie market, right?
Did.
That's where your career started?
Yeah, I went to college I went to Catholic school my whole life except kindergarten, from first grade all the way through through undergraduate school. And Erie is the 3rd largest television market in Pennsylvania. 3rd largest city. No, I misspoke. 3rd largest city. But when I was there, it was market number 144. It was so small. And the reason why is it's up in that keystone corner of the state, and 1/3 of its signal goes into Canada, and they don't count Canada, even though people are watching it over there. They don't count it here in American in television ratings. So the beauty of working, I was a senior in college, and I got a job working just part-time running studio camera for the 6 and 11 News. And senior year in college, you have most of your work done. So I would just, instead of going home, I would just stay there and self-taught how to edit and volunteer to do whatever I could, grab a camera, go to a city council or a high school football game, whatever. And we were an hour and 10 minutes from Buffalo's Rich Stadium at the time, and an hour and a half from Cleveland, the old municipal stadium, and maybe 2.5 if it was a slow traffic day to Pittsburgh. So it was small market, and you're doing high school on Friday, but on Sunday you're at a Steelers, Bills, or Browns game. And that was immeasurable for my career. I'm 22 years old, and the first time I went down, I was a camera guy, and I realized, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting here. There's Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, Donnie Shell. There's, John Stallworth, one Hall of Famer after another.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these guys get paid for this? I'm going to do this. And that is how all that started. And I was up there for a couple of years. And, when you work in small markets, especially in the early 80s, you don't make any money. And I was the weekend guy, so you make even less. I was making $11,000 a year. And I had a week's vacation, no girlfriend, nothing to do. And my best friend from high school, the Jerry that sat behind me, I stood up in his wedding the previous summer. Well, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter come, I'm working. I don't see any of my friends that came home over the holidays. I don't even see my family. And I did sneak home for like a day at Christmas. But so I'm like, I got a week. What am I going to do? So I just drive down to Atlanta, where he had relocated. And the next day, the first day I get there on a Saturday, Sunday, we go to Mass, and I see this guy at Mass, and he used to be an intern in Erie. I started talking to him. He was worked at CNN Radio, and I said, dude, you know where I work. I got to get a better job. And he called me that night when he went to work. He goes, there's 4 openings in the sports department.
Oh, wow.
He said, you call tomorrow and tell him I'm an anchor at Headline News. And the next morning I called CNN Sports, asked for the president of CNN Sports. He gave me the direct number. His administrative assistant answers the phone, and I got to work with Val for like 25 years of my career. I love her to death, but I didn't know her then. Yeah. And I told her, I said, hi, I'm Jerome Jurenovich. I'm a sports anchor in Erie, Pennsylvania. A friend of mine is an anchor downstairs at Headline News. I'm calling about one of your job openings. And she goes, hold on, with this disgusted tone of voice. I'm on hold for like 5 minutes. I'm like, she forgot about me. I'm about to hang up. And she goes, can you come in today at 2:00 for an interview? This is Monday morning. I said, yes. I said, but I'm on vacation. I don't have a suit, resume tape, reel. She goes, hold on. I could hear her rolling her eyes. And she comes right back after like 30 seconds. And she says, as long as you don't wear cutoff jeans and a tank top, we'll see you at 2. I said, I'll be in khakis and a golf shirt. She goes, perfect. And we had a great conversation. I was just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Yeah. And it was a very long conversation. He's grilling me with all these sports questions. Who are the 8 teams in the Big 8? Their nicknames and the cities that they're located in. And, I was like a sports junkie back then. So I nailed that, and I got all his answers. I got all his questions correct. And he goes, well, you're in town a couple more days. I said, yeah. He goes, I'll try to have something for you by Thursday. If not, in the next week or two, I got your number. I'll call you. And I said, fine. That afternoon, I go into my buddy's house at 4:30. Phone's ringing. This is pre-cell phone days, remember?
Yeah.
And this is like probably 85 at the time, 86 and 86. And I answered the phone thinking it's my friend telling me he's running late or he's going to be home early. And it was CNN. They said, come in tomorrow and we'll talk salary. You got the job. And 15 years there, worked my way up. And long story short, Time Warner bought us. We had a great relationship because they owned Sports Illustrated. So a lot of synergy there. And after just 2 years, AOL bought the whole caboodle. Now,
really?
They were actually ahead of their time. This is mid to late 90s. And they bought it for video content because, if you log into AOL.com, and a lot of people were using AOL back then, they have their news stories, and some of them would be videos. Very, very few back then. We just really didn't have the technology on desktops to play videos until Mark Cuban came along, really. Then they figured they wanted a streaming service, but they were probably 15 years early. And they overpaid, and they weren't getting anything out of it because we couldn't do anything because of technology. And so they just said, why do we have a sports department? Because ESPN's number one. So they end up chopping us, all of us.
Oh, wow.
Called my cousin, asked him, GE offered me a job. They started a little department where they wanted somebody to go around to the networks and talk to the sports departments to try to get them to use GE generators for their TV trucks and the scoreboards at major golf tournaments and so forth. And they said, we just want you to open the door. We'll send a salesman with us. And then as soon as I said, yeah, I'm really interested in the job because it paid a lot of money, they said, oh, you got to sell too. I said, see ya. And my cousin got me a job at Fox Sports Radio. He was good friends with Premier Radio Networks.
So that's when you went to LA, right? That's when you went.
He was really good friends with Craig Kitchen. And Premier Radio actually runs Fox Sports Radio. They just use the branding. Fox Sports says, okay, we'll split the profits. You use our logo, you use our name, and you use our music, but you do everything. And I was out there for 4 years. It was a really good experience. I loved living in Los Angeles. And I went to a going away party with one of the producers at Fox Sports on the TV side. He was moving to Denver. Stan Kroenke was starting his own regional network. He said, Jerome, I got to get you back in TV. You think about, you want to do that? You want to leave radio, come to Denver with me? And they hired me. I was the first main anchor at Altitude Sports, is the second largest regional in the country as far as the footprint. And it was home of the Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets. And did that for a couple of years. The teams were absolutely great to work with. Stan Kroenke was great to work with. After the Nuggets games, he'd come down into the Blue Sky Grill, the bar in what was then the Pepsi Center. And we sit there at the bar and we would drink beers and just talk about the game and why I think this coaching decision was wrong. Why, Stan, you got to trade that player. And he'd go, Jerome, he was great. One of the richest men in the world. He married one of the Walton daughters. She's twice as rich as he is. It's ridiculous. Yeah. He was Fortune 400. She was Fortune 200. I'm like, oh my God. So, but the network itself, the people I worked directly for were kind of, they were not good. They were very difficult to work for. I wanted to leave 3 weeks in, but contract. And as soon as it was up, I was out. And Fox Sports started these live shows and the regionals, pre and post game shows around the different Fox Sports regionals. So Atlanta had the Thrashers. Everybody knew the Braves and the Hawks. Nobody knew a red line from a blue line in Atlanta. And fortunately for me, three guys that were making the decision, all I worked with at CNN Sports. And one of them was a dear friend of mine. He called me up. He goes, you want to get out of Denver? And I said, you wouldn't believe what's happening. I'm trying to get out of Denver. I have 3 more months. He goes, well, we're not launching for 6. I said, I'm out here with Joe Sakic and Rob Blake, future Hall of Famers. Probably, 80% of this team I'm dealing with have already won at least one, if not 2 Stanley Cups. I said, yeah, I'll come out and do it. So that got me back to Atlanta, and I spent 15 years there. It's funny, I got back there because of hockey, and 2 years later, the Thrashers moved up to Winnipeg. But We also did the Carolina Hurricanes and Nashville Predators, as well as Memphis Grizzlies and Charlotte Hornets. So it was busy and a lot of work, but I loved it because I was the main guy and I got to do all the big shows and made a lot of good friends over the years and met a lot of really, really good athletes and got to live out my dream for basically 40 years. A little kid in Western PA that grew up just loving sports, always out on that blacktop road, playing tag football or wiffle ball, and then, going to the little baseball field that was at the high school, playing baseball if we could get enough guys, and just playing hoops 12 months a year. Whether it was snow on the ground or not, we were out there playing hoops. So to grow up in that and then get to actually talk about it for 40 years and get paid to talk about it, I have no complaints at all.
Yeah, it was a good ride. I mean, it's like Kismet. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got to tell you this story though.
Yeah.
So I get hired, and the legendary Bill MacPhail. I'll tell you. I'll share a couple stories with Bill. Bill was old school. He was the very first president of CBS Sports. Before CBS launched the sports department in the 50s. So Bill hired, Tom Brookshire. They were a legend in broadcasting. Bill had hired him. Okay. And Pat Summerall, all those guys, he hired all of them. Matter of fact, they thought he was crazy for hiring Pat Summerall because he was a former player. He was a player. He wasn't a broadcaster. He played for the New York Giants.
Yeah.
And Bill put him on the air. And they're like, what are you doing? This is network TV. And Summerall turned out to be one of the greatest ever, correct? Yeah. So Bill, but back then, you had to change your name on TV. It couldn't be more than 3 syllables. Johnny Smith. Or, John, whatever, McHenry. They never wanted more than 3 syllables combined for the 2 names. And I go in there, Jerome Jurenovich, and he's looking at me. And he goes, I'm going to have to call up to the president to see if they want you to change your name. And I said, Bill. I said, look, this is my first day. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. You say jump, I say how high. I said, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. But I will say this. Number one, it'll just break my mother and my father's heart if I have to change my name. Now, I had 2 cousins in radio. They both changed their names. And I said, number 2, this is CNN. We're a worldwide network. We're going all over the world. Not everybody in Europe is named Jones or Smith. There is a lot of people over there that have 3 and 4 vowels in their name. And he goes, that's a good point. And he went upstairs, he come back, and they want you to keep that name and not change it. And I said, damn right they do. It's Jurenovich, baby.
It just rolls, though. Jerome Jurenovich. I mean, you got to love that. Come on.
And there were 8 of us that did headline sports. And I was the only one that really had that long name. And I was just talking to somebody earlier today, and he was asking me about me and Van Earl Wright. We had very unique deliveries. Everybody else was, Ron Hyde's in headline sports. And everybody, they were all generic names and just a quick professional delivery. And I'm out there going, Jerome Jurenovich, headlines. I'm dragging it out. There's a funny story behind that. But so people remembered that. It was absolutely crazy how, 15 years, it just embedded. That was before cell phones and sport tickers. Headline News was the first network to have a ticker. They had exclusively for 2 years, and then everybody has them now, right? And those yahoos didn't know what they were doing. They were putting like Division III games on there. So it'd be like Michigan, Ohio State. You wouldn't see a score update for 2 hours because they're doing like Valdosta State. Like, what are you doing, man? Just put the 5 major conferences. My goodness, pull your hair out. But I do want to share a couple stories with you with Bill. And if you're a fan of the NFL, you'll find this interesting. So Bill was hard, man. He was negotiating with Pete Rozelle for the NFL contract. And before we were even around, the CBS, they just broadcast New York Giants games all over the country. They didn't do this, local team stuff. And they were trying to get that done. And Bill was, he was shrewd he was a shrewd negotiator. Pete would be out there sweating, and Bill's like, I'm not giving you another dime. He'd go back behind the door, and the owners would be, Bill said he used to listen in, and the owners would be screaming at Pete. He was only 29 when he became commissioner. You get more out of him. And he told him, he goes, first of all, Pete, I'll tell you right now, you're going to take what I'm giving you, or I'm going to go sign the AFL, and we go into every big city in America, and you guys are going to be second place behind the AFL. Go tell them that. And of course, they came right out and signed. But Tex Schramm, people will remember his name as the guy that built the Dallas Cowboys along with Tom Landry. So he got fired from the Rams, and back then they all knew each other. It was a small little buddy system. So Bill MacPhail hires him as vice president of CBS Sports. And the only thing Tex knew about TV was how to turn one on and off. And he's working for him for a couple months. And one night Bill goes, "Hey, Tex, there's an NFL dinner in town. I go to these things 2-3 times a week. I'm tired. I don't want to go. You go. Maybe you'll see some of your old friends, mingle. It's an NFL function. You'll love it. You'll have a blast." So Tex goes and he sits down at a round table, and spends the whole night next to a guy who happened to be at that time the defensive coordinator of the New York Giants. And Tex had heard his name, knew of him, of course, but had never spoken to him. But he spends the whole night and he's talking to him. And within a month, he comes into Bill's office. He goes, "Bill, I have to leave. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. You gave me a job when I didn't have one." He goes, "But I got a chance to get back in the NFL. They're starting a brand new franchise down in Dallas, Texas, going to be the Dallas Cowboys. And they've tabbed me to be the first general manager." And Bill goes, "Fantastic, great, good for you. God bless you. Good luck with it." And Tex Schramm's first hire was the defensive coordinator of the New York Giants, who he sat next to all night, Tom Landry. So
Amazing.
Bill MacPhail goes to dinner that night. Tex Schramm never meets Tom Landry. He may give him an interview, we don't know. But the chances are he never hires Tom Landry. And the whole history of the Dallas Cowboys, which are intertwined with the history of the NFL, changed dramatically. The NFL is not what we think it is now. The Cowboys never become America's team, and you don't know what happens. All because Bill didn't want to go to dinner.
That's crazy.
And he had 100 of those stories. Anyway, go ahead. What's next? Fire away, baby.
I was going to take you back to Erie because you had a great story about meeting the Yankee Clipper, because what you had to do to fill time.
I'm sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
That's all right. That's a great.
No. The fill time was the headline thing. I'll get to that. So I go to, yes, at fill time. Yes, I know what you're saying now. Excuse me. In Erie, when I started at the TV station, they didn't have weekend news. So they started it with a skeleton crew. And not a lot happens in Erie on the weekends. So most sports anchors get like 2.5 to 3 minutes. And they're looking at me like, "Hey, Jerome, can you fill like 6 or 7 minutes?" Which is an eternity if you think about it. And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do it, whatever." So I recorded every game I could on TV and cable, and I'm showing highlights. Even if I don't care if the Knicks are playing the Bucks and no one cares about it. I'm showing the highlights. And 3 months in, I have to go to Meadville, tiny little Meadville, which is smaller than Sharon, maybe 15,000 people, maybe. And they had a great sports banquet. They would bring in Browns and Indians, Steelers and Pirates. And they always did it really well. Meadville, by the way, is the home of actress Sharon Stone. That's its claim to fame.
Oh.
So a little bit of trivia there for you. Not that that means anything. It has no relation to me. But my sports director goes, "Jerome, the Pirates hired Jim Leland as manager, and nobody knows what he looks like." Because back then we didn't have computers, and you never saw the White Sox third base coach, right? So go down there and interview him. So I walk in, and one of the guys at the door taking tickets, he says, "Hey, you're the new guy. You're the only one in the area that shows NBA highlights. I love the NBA. I'm going to do you a big favor. There's a surprise guest coming, and he's coming through the kitchen. Go in the kitchen. This is going to make your career." So I guess one of those old fashioned, the double doors, and I go in the kitchen. I'm in there with my cameraman waiting. And I look outside the window. There's Willie Stargell and Don Robinson, the Pirates. There's couple of linemen from the Browns. I'm like, I'm missing all these interviews. I'm going to get fired. And then the back door opens up, and it's right out of Goodfellas. These 5 big Italian Goombas with these shiny suits come walking in, and they're like leading a wedge on a kickoff. And behind him is Joe DiMaggio. I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Joe DiMaggio." That's their surprise. "Turn the light on. Let's go, Mr. DiMaggio." He came right over. I was so nervous. I called him Mr. DiMaggio on every question. And they gave everybody a baseball that walked in the door. And I had mine in my pocket, and technically we're not really supposed to ask for autographs. But about 3 questions in, they could see the lights when the waiters were coming in and out. And next thing you know, all these kids started coming in out of nowhere through the doors. And I'm reaching for a prop here. And just like this, I'm interviewing Joe DiMaggio, I'm holding on to the microphone, and all of a sudden you see this. There's like 50 of these going like this with pens. And he just starts signing these balls for all these little kids. And, one of the guys said, "One last question." I got 5 questions with, one of the greatest baseball players and an American legend. He's an icon, right? So I'm very appreciative. So I said, "Thank you." And as he started to walk away, I go, Mr. DiMaggio, I said, hey, excuse me. I said, if we were at the stadium, I'm not really supposed to do this. I said, but look, you're Joe DiMaggio, man. Would you sign my ball too? He goes, absolutely. And I'm like, oh my God, I scored Joe DiMaggio's autograph. That is awesome. I still have it. It's in my safe. I won't even display it.
Oh, that's a great story. I love that story. That's a great story.
But yeah, so the headline news, that's what came about. I mean, I had to do so much. So I'd run like 3-minute interview with Joe DiMaggio. I had to fill 7 minutes on the weekends. And then when I get down to headline news, it was all on a computer Q-tone. So at exactly 19 and 49 after the hour, the music started. You had like about a 3 or 4 second bed, and then you had to start talking. And at 1:47, Monday through Friday, it was an extra minute on Saturday and Sunday. At a minute 47, it cut the mic. So, you had to, we taped most of those. So, you had to go between a minute 42 and a minute 47, or you would just sound like an idiot if you went 1:37. There's 10 seconds of music, right? You don't want that dead air. So I kept trying to get it, and I couldn't hit it. I was short every time. And they said, last take, you got to go now. So I'm looking at the clock, and it's like a minute 38, and I'm done talking. And I just went, Jerome Jurenovich, headline sports. And I dragged it out for like 9 seconds. And I walked out, and everybody in the newsroom, all the news writers and the news producers, because the sports was on the second floor, they're laughing at me. They're laughing in my face. And the guys were like giving me the thumbs up. I go upstairs, and a couple of the guys up there were listening because it was one of my first shows. Yeah. And they were like, dude, that was the worst thing I ever heard in my life. And I said, you know what? But everybody heard it. Everybody downstairs is either laughing at me or they're thinking it's cool. And I said, I'm just going to keep doing it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it until they tell me not to do it. And next thing I know, my boss comes in like on Monday, 2 days later. He looks at me and he's just shaking his head. He goes, don't stop. Just don't stop. And he just walked away. And I'm like, all right, and that kind of became my signature between the name and that, drawing it out like that. Yeah. People still ask me to do that. My wife, like 10 years ago, she didn't know what to buy me for my birthday. So she went online and ordered a bobblehead. It was one of those that, like just like the ones they give away at the stadium, but it had audio on it. So she downloaded that and put it on there. And when you press the button, that's what it says. I'm like, oh my God. It was her ringtone for like 10 years. I said, honey, you got to shut that off when we're in public together. I don't want anybody hearing that when we're at a dinner table. She still has it on her phone. It cracks me up. I mean, I left there in 2001. And she's still playing that thing.
That's great. So I got a question for you. You've met a lot of famous people, sports or in the sports arena. Is there one interview that you're like, oh, I really want to interview this person, and you just never got to them? Like, or was there somebody that like just blew your socks off? That a fabulous interview that you did with someone?
Well, there were two guys. There was 2 guys I wanted to meet and one I wanted to interview. The reason I didn't want to interview the second person is because by the time I started doing what I was doing, Muhammad Ali wasn't really conversational, but I did always want to meet him. And one time we got off the bus with the Hawks in Los Angeles. We stayed at that same the hotel in Beverly Hills that Julia Roberts was in Pretty Woman, the one and we're walking in the back door, and it was a long flight, and it was massive LA traffic. As soon as the bus pulled off, I darted off because I had to go to the bathroom. So I'm sitting there, I go to the bathroom real quick, and I go in and grab a bottle of water. I think I paid like $12 for it because of that hotel. God, what are you kidding me? I come out, I'm like taking my time. They're like, Jerome, where were you? And I go, Muhammad Ali was right here. We were all taking pictures with him. I'm like, oh my God. The one I always wanted to meet and always wanted to interview was one of my childhood heroes. When you're a little kid, you don't really have any sort of affiliation with where you're from. Yeah. Little kids growing up in the 90s all loved Michael Jordan, whether they were in Oklahoma, Chicago, or Orlando. It didn't matter. It was Michael Jordan, right? Yeah. And as you grow up a little bit older, you realize, hey, I'm from Pittsburgh. I got to start rooting for, Clemente and Stargell. But when I was a little boy, Willie Mays was my hero. And people used to make fun of me because I loved the San Francisco Giants. I was like 5 years old, Mays, McCovey, and Marichal. And I was at the All-Star game out in San Francisco years ago, and he was there, but he was just surrounded by a wall of people. And I don't blame him. I would have been too if I could have got close. And I never got an opportunity. And, God rest his soul. I did interview Johnny Unitas, my childhood football hero, on the phone when I was at CNN. I'm so cheesy.
Do tell.
Sports Illustrated came out with a big story. It was one of they used to do a really, really good job on these long investigative pieces. And it was basically, to summarize it, the older guys from the NFL weren't getting a penny from the league. And these guys, Johnny Unitas, Jim Brown, Ray Nitschke, and all these guys, Bart Starr, they built the NFL, right? They don't get a dime. And they were complaining with the union, your players are starting to make millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. We don't expect any money. We just need health benefits. We're dying here. And we didn't make money, so we can't really afford health insurance. At least, and those guys, they had serious health problems. Multiple surgeries. Most of them couldn't walk. They had tremendous head injuries. The great John Mackey, he was like basically a vegetable. It was horrible. And so that's what the story was. And it came out, and I'm sitting there, I'm reading it at my desk, and Johnny was on the cover. So I called the Ravens. And they said, Jerome, Johnny really doesn't have anything to do with us. Now, he comes to the games whenever he wants. He brings his grandkids. We don't turn him away. He doesn't ask for tickets or credentials because he doesn't need to. He's Johnny Unitas. They just let him walk out on the field. No one's going to say no.
Right.
My goodness, he's the greatest athlete in the history of Baltimore. Who's going to tell him you can't come into the stadium?
Right.
He goes, but I will say this, I do have this one number. He used to work at this insurance company, and I called. And somebody answered the phone. I said, I'm calling for Johnny Unitas. And he goes, you got him. I explained who I am. And I said, Johnny, I just read the article in Sports Illustrated. I work for CNN Sports. We are part of CNN now, Time Warner, and we're part of Sports Illustrated. I did want to ask you 2 follow-up questions to it, and then I have to reveal something. He goes, well, go ahead. I asked him the questions. I said, well, the main reason why I'm calling is I got an authentic Colts helmet here, and you were my childhood hero, and I'll do whatever it takes to get an autograph. I'll pay shipping both ways, include he goes, 5013C, the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Foundation. You may know that we give out an award for the best college quarterback every year, the Golden Arm. He goes, it is a pure nonprofit, and I don't make a penny off of it. My son runs it, and it's $100. If you pay shipping and return shipping, stick whatever you in there. He goes, I only sign my name, and he goes and just put a check in there for $100 to the 5013C, and I'll take care of it. And like less than 10 days, I got it back, and it's sitting on my shelf. I've got 5 helmets over here: Unitas, Namath, Montana, Marino, and Kelly. All 5, as you know, from Pittsburgh. Draw a little circle around Pittsburgh. I look, the Steelers have won 6 Super Bowls, and 5 of the greatest quarterbacks ever come from right there. I got bragging rights till the day I die. And believe me, I play it up constantly. I go, there's a whole wing of the Hall of Fame just for guys from Western PA. That's what I tell everybody.
That's right.
You go ahead and root for your 1 or 2 Hall of Famers. We got like 17, okay?
That's great. That's great stuff. Well, Jerome, we could stay on all night, but I don't think you have time to do.
I got all the time in the world. I don't want to bore you, and I don't want you cutting out. I know you got limitations, so whatever you. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, let's go to that final part.
Sure.
We know you are in retirement. You're enjoying retirement. So that question of what's Jerome been up to in retirement? Talk to us. What you been doing?
Okay, 3 things. I already discussed a little bit. When you work nights and weekends in sports, you miss out on a lot of like cousins' weddings and a lot of functions. Like guys are getting together to play cards, or couples in the neighborhood going to concerts. I missed all that. I missed it all because I work nights and weekends. So I'm making up for lost time. My wife and I have been to 18 countries in the last 5 years and 16 states. So we're traveling. She's still working, but she's got one of these great gigs. So we travel extensively. We go to Europe. We try to go for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Nice. So we usually go 3 or 4 countries. I've been a dog lover for a long, long time. I had 3 dogs for 15 years. I've had 7 rat terriers. That's my breed of choice. The reason why I like them is because they're small. They're anywhere, 12 to 20 pounds. Just pick them up with one hand, throw them in the car if you got to go to the vet. My neighbor has a 110-pound lab. Him and I are like breaking our backs to get this dog in the back of his SUV. So little dogs, whoop.
They are cute, though. They are cute.
Yeah. And they have all passed. So I have been fostering dogs. In the last 10 months, I've gotten 7 of them adopted. I don't currently have one because I am going out to Las Vegas in the next week or 2 to do the third activity that's keeping me busy. So travel, fostering dogs. And I like how you said master of ceremonies. I like that expression, master. Who's your master? Everybody else calls me an MC. So I'm going out to MC a national baseball banquet for young African-American kids that don't get opportunities to play baseball. This organization does a great job. There's 27 people getting inducted. Half of them are athletes. The other half are corporate sponsors. Bo Jackson's probably the biggest name going in. Several guys that I know that used to play for the Braves, Brian Jordan, Marquise Grissom, and so forth.
Oh, wow.
Luis Alicea from the Cardinals, a couple of those guys. So I'm gonna MC that. That's gonna be my first time there. I MC Brian's charity golf tournament here, and Marquise Grissom's in the spring. So and I don't take a dime for those. I mean, because they're all charities.
Yeah.
They all offer me money, and I'm like, no, dude. You're providing a service that is helping your community, and half the times it's my community too. And at some point, you just have to learn to give back, I had back surgery, so I'm not out building houses the way Jimmy Carter used to do or doing all that kind of heavy manual labor. So the Lord blessed me 40 years of broadcasting. I kind of have a gift of gab. So I utilize that. If anybody asks, the answer is always yes. The best one I ever did was Mario Lemieux. That was absolutely awesome because there's him and Gretzky. There's Elway and Marino. There were probably 5 or 6 Steelers, including Cordell Stewart and Jerome Bettis. If they weren't Hall of Famers like Johnny Bench and Nick Bonicani and Len Dawson and Jan Stenerud, they were all-stars and all-pros. And it was just, there must have been 60 or 70 athletes there. And they let me hang out with them, like in the players' lounge, Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at them, and I'm just, I had $300 on me. And Michael Jordan's the most competitive athlete you will ever meet in your life. And I wanted to go over there and grab a 7-iron with 3 golf balls and put my $100 on the table with 3 balls and go, come on, Michael, let's go hit 3. Closest to the whip pin takes the 600. He would have did it in a heartbeat. The problem was I'm a hacker and Michael Jordan golfs like every day. So that would have been like giving Michael Jordan $300. That would have been a great story for the rest of my life, but I needed the $300. So I'm like, no, that's all right.
Oh man. No, we felt it in the room. Like you are giving back to different communities, but in this past weekend at the Croatian-American Sports Hall of Fame, you felt it in the room. Your presence and your Croatian heritage, it rings through strong. And giving back to that community means a lot to all of us. So we appreciate you doing that too.
Well,
so.
I thank you for saying that. And being involved with that is a high priority for me. The first one was 2 years ago, as you know, and it was kind of from scratch. And it was in Cleveland. We had 90-some people, I think. I don't think any of the athletes were from Cleveland, which is one of the reasons why the turnout was a little bit lower. But Fred Couples got in. The late Roger Maris got in. Mickey Lolich got in. Joe Sakic, they were big names. George Mikan, his family couldn't make it. So as you know, they were here in Pittsburgh recently and joined us there to accept the award. Rudy Tomjanovich was the headliner this year, and we're trying to get Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, 2 very proud Croatians. So if I can be involved, not only in going to Croatia and helping out the tourism industry by spending my money on wine and beer and good food over there and hotels and all that. That's the least I could do to help out, here in the country. I mean, the national, the NFCA, that's a good group, as is the CFU. They're both really, really good groups. They do a lot for the communities and for Croatian-Americans and to promote our culture. And it's just, we're both proud Croatians, my friend. We all are. And there was 330 people who were in that room.
That's right.
They weren't all Croatian, but they were that night. That's for sure.
That's right. That's right. There was a lot of tears. It was really emotional that evening for a lot of the professionals in the room. So two of them start crying back to back, and the second one was Jim Laszlovic, the former linebacker. And I'm like, that's it, because I start getting teary eyed. Kara got, she talking about her father who passed away when she was like 4 or 5 years old. It was like Niagara Falls with her. And then Jim gets up there and he goes, over under is a minute, crying. I'm like, oh, don't. And then he starts crying. And I'm like, how am I supposed to talk? Everybody in this room is crying. And I have to talk. Nobody else has to talk. So hopefully we're going to get the criers out of the way. So I don't need any more. I thought crying. Rudy T might have started crying too. You got all emotional towards the end, right? Oh, man.
Yeah. It was, it was a good time though. And, as you know, and anybody that was there, Rudy grew up outside of Detroit in a Polish neighborhood. He told me he knew he was Croatian, but they had no insight into his Croatian heritage or culture. Yeah. And he learned so much that weekend. It was so genuinely touched and appreciative of it. Yeah. And to see people reconnect with their Croatian roots and to show that pride swells all of us up with pride. Yeah. And, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome what you do. This is great. This is good stuff. So congrats to you guys too. You and Scott did a great job, and you keep it up. And we'll just keep sneaking away, and maybe who knows, man? Maybe somebody will sneak in a bottle of Schlievovic next time we have one of these things. And
keep on going. We'll definitely have to supply that, right?
Yeah, we'll just there won't be any crying. There may be a lot of giggling, and laughing. I don't know. I'll be stumbling left and right. Keep me away from that stuff, at least till afterwards.
Crying in
anyway.
baseball. There's no crying here.
No crying at the CSA. What are you doing anyway? It's great. Steve Rukavina is his brainchild. Him and Vedran, and they really they took an idea. And they put it together, and I knew it was a lot of work for them, just a lot of man hours, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and they get all the credit. I just go up there and talk.
And you do it well. You do it well. Hey, I told you at the beginning, I'm pinching myself. I can't believe I got to spend this time with you interviewing a professional in broadcast. It's amazing. You're a great guy. You contribute a lot, as we said, and just thank you for this time with us. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me on and the kind words. And I love the fact that while I was in Pittsburgh, I made 2 more Croatian friends than you and Scott, and they're going to be lifelong friendships. I can tell you that.
Appreciate that, Jerome. Appreciate that. Right back at you too. All right. So to wrap up another episode, we want to say thank you. Point of file to all of our CRO-AM followers for tuning in, and to Filthy 46 Productions for their editing and production expertise. So until next time, živjeli Hrvati, veliki poz I Bog. Catch our next episode where we sit down for a conversation with Mike Bacon, a proud member of Nest 27, which is part of Sveto Trojstvo, CFU Lodge 146 in Versailles, PA. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and other podcast platforms, along with watching us on our YouTube channel or following us on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks and appreciation to Jerome Jurenovich for being our guest, Filthy 46 Productions, and as always, our CRO-AM followers.
Follow.